Okay, so I've been listening to you all this whole semester, and I kind of got the idea that you all are from more like rural or like small town places, so it was important for me to pick out a science topic that was going to be relatable to you. And I thought that it's important for us as citizens to be scientific and to be able to make some decisions that will impact our environment. And so I decided to pick sustainable farming. And so the objectives of this lesson is for us to know how to respond to sustainable farming and to understand everybody who's involved and how we might solve these problems together collaboratively. And so what I'm first going to show you is a news clip about the algal blooms in Lake Erie. So here we go.
Researchers at the University of Michigan and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration warn Lake Erie is looking at one of the most severe algae blooms in recent years. The enormous bursts of greenery are thanks mostly to cyanobacteria, which aren't actually algae at all, but single-cell bacterial organisms that run on sunlight and nitrogen. And for such tiny things, they can cause big problems. Cyanobacteria cause dead zones in both fresh and salt water. When a bloom dies, it absorbs all the oxygen in the water. The bigger the bloom, the greater the oxygen drain. This throws the rest of the ecosystem out of balance. Fish and other animals that can move to richer waters leave the area. Everything else runs the risk of dying due to oxygen depletion. Certain variants of cyanobacteria are also toxic to humans and animals. Last month, one such bloom on the Pacific coast caused seizures in sea lions. NOAA therefore warns against swimming and boating in high concentrations of algae or drinking water where blooms occur. Last year's bloom on Erie, for example, was enough to shut down water supplies in Toledo, Ohio. And on paper at least, this year's bloom is shaping up to be even more significant. Researchers are awarding Erie's 2015 outlook an 8.7 on a scale of 10, where 10 is the worst bloom ever recorded. Last year was a 6.5. They blame the worsening conditions on industrial runoff, specifically fertilizer.
The excessive algae are being produced by too much nitrogen and phosphorus going into those systems. Most of the nitrogen and phosphorus is coming from that.
Reducing those emissions is key to cutting down on harmful blooms. In the meantime, NOAA runs a bloom tracker, updated twice weekly with the latest imagery from NASA satellites. I'm Kate.
So there we see that there's obviously a big problem that's going on. You can turn on the lights if you want. And so what we're going to do is we're going to learn about how to use the scientific method, which is very much used by scientists. And I have an outline of what that is for each of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign each of you a role so that you can research and come to know what that perspective might have on this problem at hand. And using that perspective, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes is really important to understanding one another in a world that's so diverse, but also to tackle problems collaboratively and interdisciplinary. And so every person is going to get a different role, and I want you to use the scientific method, which has an outline of what those each specific steps are, and I want you to use that perspective and come up with a way to use an experiment or to try and solve this problem. So we're going to do this individually, and then later on in the class, if we have time, which we probably won't, we're going to pair up with people who have the same role so you can discuss ideas, and then you'll go back to your table and try to solve the problem interdisciplinary and collaboratively with people who have different perspectives. So you're going to be a farmer, and I'm going to have you be a consumer. You're going to be a supplier for like the fertilizer and stuff, and then you're going to be a water quality environmentalist. And so then you're going to be a farmer, consumer, supplier, and water quality environmentalist. A farmer, consumer, supplier, water quality environmentalist, consumer, farmer. And so I'm going to walk around and answer any questions that you might have. You can see that there's a little role line on your paper, so you can write your role down. You're going to be a farmer, and you're going to be an environmentalist. And I want you all to come up with a question, and then come up with a hypothesis, which is a way that you want to try and solve the problem, and then an experiment, so actually to design an experiment on how to approach that. So you can talk with a friend next to you about what that concept might be, but it's also specific to your role.
What are the suppliers for fertilizer, you said?
Yeah, the suppliers are those who give the farmers what they need to do their agricultural duties.
Any other questions?
Nice one. These are good questions. I like that question, it's a good one. Nice. Nice. Yeah. What time is it? These are pretty nice hypotheses, I like these.